All right. Hello, everyone out there. Welcome to episode number 4 of Lunch with Lakers. My name is Ryan Palm. I work in the alumni office at the Hearst. And for anybody joining us for the first time, Lunch with Lakers is simply a weekly video series to try and connect our alumni, friends, parents, prospective students with the latest happenings at Mercyhurst. We're all in a very unique situation, given being stuck at home for most of us and not able to interact face to face. So our hope is simply to bring a little bit of Mercyhurst to you in a virtual setting. Our first few weeks are topics kind of focused around the COVID-19 coronavirus situation and how Mercyhurst is adapting and dealing with it. So we've been really lucky to have some wonderful guests that have joined us. If you haven't already, please feel free to visit the Lunch with Lakers page where we post the recordings each week. We certainly hear from folks every week that they can't make it, so we're always happy to post those recordings. Lindsay Frank from our alumni team is also joining us. She's manning the chat room. So if you haven't used Zoom before, there is a chat function towards the bottom of your screen, and you can click in there and ask questions. Lindsay has already posted the link for the Lunch with Lakers page. So again, you can go there, sign up for future webinars, watch past ones. Please feel free to share that link with friends and family who can tune in as well. We will be glad to take any questions via the chat function, so please feel free to send those at any point throughout the conversation. You don't have to wait till the end. We would love to see anybody weighing in with questions, with comments, anything you might see. If we don't get to some of the questions by the end of our time together, Brian has gracefully agreed to send along answers via email afterwards, so we'll be happy to follow up with that. I think that takes care of most of our housekeeping procedures, and I want to personally welcome Brian Sheridan to join us today. Brian is a faculty member in our communications department. He is a man of many interests and talents and skills and abilities, and he's a good conversation for just about any topic you can bring up. But he has a particular expertise in mindfulness and meditation and some topics that I think are very appropriate given the circumstances that we all find ourselves in today. And so with that, I would love to introduce Brian and ask you to go ahead and start by telling us a little bit about yourself, how you came to Mercyhurst, and how you got into the position you are today.
Well, thank you very much, Ryan, for asking me. I'm very honored. And hello, Naomi. I saw her in the posted chat, someone from my time, because I was a Mercyhurst student and graduated in 1987, was editor of the Mercy Ad, and went on to a career in broadcast news, and decided that I would pursue my master's degree and further extend my education. And then the opportunity came up at Mercyhurst to replace a faculty member in the communication department. I met with the president at the time, and I met with the vice presidents and the deans, and they did this and asked that about me because I really had no education experience other than what was pointed out, which you just pointed out. I had many interests. So it seemed that a university, a college life would be something that would fit well with me and my particular interests or varied interests. And so I taught a class. They liked what they saw. They gave me a contract that put me on as a staff member, because they were like, well, we don't know. You may not work out, right? And we don't want to put you in the faculty, and you may not like it either, because it does take a certain type of personality. I've had friends in the business who said, I'm going to go and teach a class, and then they come back and go, how do you do that every week? Oh my God, every year. It takes a certain thing. So it within a few years, I think I proved my worth, hopefully, and they put me on the faculty, and then I've been there ever since, and now I'm the department chair of the communication department.
Wonderful. That's really neat, and thanks for sharing that story. So I want to start off asking a similar question that we've asked a few of the other faculty that we've had on. We obviously made a very quick and in some ways abrupt transition to remote learning, maybe halfway through the semester, as pretty much every school across the country did so. Can you tell us a little bit about how that transition to remote learning has gone for you personally, for your students and the classes that you're teaching this semester?
For me personally and the classes, I think they have gone really well. My background is television, so it was simple. I don't obviously have a problem talking into a camera, a bit of a ham as you might expect. So it was just getting all of the assignments moved, and I was already using Blackboard and online tools in my classes that we were meeting in person with. So it wasn't a big deal. I think the students, some work very well in an online environment, others struggle mightily. And this is not a normal, isn't even a normal online environment because of the pressures of being sent home, right? And having to clear out and being worried about your health and the health of your family and your loved ones, plus the pressures of being back at home all of a sudden with very little warning to make accommodations. And I've seen the range. I've seen some people love it and other people really struggle with it. So we're trying to make it as best as we can for everyone.
Wonderful. So one of your courses that I think is somewhat legendary around Mercyhurst is a course in mindfulness. Before we get into the topic and you kind of giving us some background on mindfulness itself, how did you become involved with mindfulness? And I guess when did it become an idea to teach that as a class at Mercyhurst?
So I've always been interested in mindfulness from the perspective of the martial arts. I studied the martial arts, and my particular style is Tai Chi Chuan, which is an internal martial art. They call it moving meditation, and also Taekwondo. And there were similarities in meditation principles for both. Focus, really, that's what mindfulness is. It's focus and attention. So that's needed in both of those arts. I've always thought though, and then when I met the Dalai Lama on a news assignment, that also kind of pushed me in that direction. He's an amazing teacher. But the idea is that I always thought I'm not a meditator. I can't meditate. My mind, it's too jumpy. It goes all around. Come to find out that that's exactly the type of person who needs to meditate. And so it's like seeing the medicine and you going, no, I don't need it. I'm well. Mindfulness is a tonic for people whose brains tend to just go in all directions. It's not something many people think. Mindfulness and meditation, which really has to be taught together, that meditation is emptying your mind of everything and becoming a formless blob. It is not that. It is having control over your thoughts. So that's where it all came together for me. I was listening and reading a lot about mindfulness, and it was a Dharma talk by a psychotherapist and Buddhist named Tara Brach in 2014. I remember it like it was yesterday because it was one of those genius moments, and I don't have many of those. So that was this time where I was running the track listening to one of her Dharma talks. It was called Dharma for Stressful Times. And it was about dealing with anxiety and fears and all of this other thing. And I kept saying to myself, young people should really hear this. Young people should know this. Young people should do this. And then I stopped and I said, wait a minute, I have access to young people. I'm a faculty member at a university. Went home, sat down, put together a class very quickly, took it to my dean at the time, who said, you could do it as a special topics, put it on the books, put the syllabus together, got it approved within the next year. It was the winter of 2014, 2015 that it was run. It was a run for the first time, and we had 9 students. We barely had enough to make a class because nobody knew exactly what it was. It wasn't something official in our curriculum. It was a special topics, but it was very successful. The students really appreciated it. They seemed to get a lot out of it. And we realized, I think we're onto something that makes us unique. Other programs, other communication programs do not focus on things like this. And these are tools that students of all types can really help them as long as they use them. So that's when the first time we're going on 6 years now, 5 or 6 years that we first taught the course. And it's been taught sometimes twice a term or twice an academic year. We get up to 30 students. We usually have a waiting list. It's become a very popular class.
That's really fascinating. So would you say that most of the students enter the course with very little to no background on mindfulness? I mean, I imagine it's not something they've come across, probably most of them, in any of their other studies or interests prior to your course. Is that a correct assumption?
That's a good assumption. Most of the time I hear, I don't know what this course is about, but I was told it would help me, or it would be good for me to take. So they signed up for it, often with not even knowing what the class was about other than the title. So then, of course, the first week we spend our week learning about definitions for mindfulness and teaching meditation techniques, because every class begins with a meditation. We start at 3 minutes, we move up to 4, and then by the end of the class, we're up to 5 minutes of meditation at the beginning of the class.
Wow, that's fascinating. So my next question was going to be, give us, a brief overview of mindfulness. And I think you've covered a lot of that. Are there any other key principles that it's helpful for us to know, kind of just the very basics of the concept?
Yes, I'd like to read 2 definitions that I use for the class. One from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who developed this at Boston University and took this stems from Buddhism, but I teach it in a secular manner. Jon Kabat-Zinn teaches it in a secular manner, and he defines mindfulness as paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So that's a very academic way of approaching it. The other one that I like to use, that Dan Harris, the ABC journalist who created the 10% Happier platform, which I highly recommend everyone using, he says what it is it's a skill. So it's a skill. I like that because that means it's something you can develop. It's not something you're innately born with. It's a skill generated through primarily meditation, where you learn to see what's happening in your head right now clearly, so that you don't get yanked around by it. And how many of us have thoughts that yank us around emotionally and in other ways that we shouldn't be doing. We should, if we can take a look at those ideas and examine them, that's helpful. Biologically, we are classified as Homo sapiens sapien, and people often forget or don't know that there's that second sapien to the classification. That sapien means we are the only species who can think about thinking. And that's a critical element. We can step outside of our thoughts and examine them. Often we don't do that. We just think because they're coming from our brain that it must be the right idea, it must be a great idea. Sometimes it is not. Sometimes it is not helpful. So being able to step outside of that. Do we have time to do a little practice thing that'll blow everyone's mind? Okay, so this is from comedian Pete Holmes, who is hilarious. He's also a longtime meditator, but he does this in his act, and I use it in class because it really demonstrates how our minds work. So everyone just, you don't need to close your eyes, you can if you want, but just sing inside your head, happy birthday. We all know the song, happy birthday to, sing that in your head. Now, turn up the volume, make it louder. Now turn the volume down so it's really quiet in your head. Could you do that, Ryan? Could you do that? Did it? He's frozen. Or am I frozen? Uh-oh. I don't know if I'm hosting this show by myself now or... I'm good. Okay, so if you have done this, we'll wait for Ryan to try to get back in here. If you have done this, who is doing that? Your brain, your thoughts are engaged with the song, but then you're stepping outside of it, turning up the volume, and then turning it down. But no one's hearing it. It's not like leaking out of your ears. So how is that working? Isn't that amazing that our brains can do that? That's also in meditation. When we sit for meditation, or you could do lying down meditation or standing meditation, the way it's not as important as examining the thoughts that are coming up in our heads. And why we put this in the communication department and why I was so fascinated and interested in teaching it is because our thoughts develop into storylines. And creation of a story tends to make us think that what we're thinking is real. And if we can step outside that story, if we can look at that story, examine it. In our book, they call it curiosity and care. If we can be curious about why we're thinking about something like that, then that might be helpful for us to stop when we are thinking of things that aren't helpful to us, and being able to set aside. When we meditate, as I said, we're not trying to empty our minds and just become blissful in terms of we don't teach happiness per se, because everyone's idea of happiness is different. What we're trying to teach is equanimity, so that our days, our minds, our emotions are waves. In times like this, when we're very stressed, we want to kind of level out those waves. So it's not so, the highs aren't so high maybe, and the lows aren't so low. That if we can just be, if we can hold on to our equanimity. Welcome back.
My daughter is on a group chat with her entire first grade class upstairs.
I know.
You might have overloaded the system. Sorry about that.
It happens here at 2:00 because my wife is on, my son's on, and yeah, it's going in. So I've just been kind of explaining a little bit about what we try to do, but back to our little activity. You could do that, right? You could sing happy birthday in your head and make it louder or make it quieter. Who's doing that? How is that possible, right? So what I was saying is that the equanimity is what we're trying to accomplish, and looking at those storylines. And if the story itself doesn't serve us, letting it go. Just like in meditation, we let our thoughts go. We label them thinking, and then we let them drift by like clouds in the sky. We don't grab onto them. It's when we grab onto them, and when it's sometimes a bad idea, and we grab onto it, that's when problems happen. We also tend to not recognize the physical reactions to our thoughts. We all carry stress different ways. Some people carry it in their foreheads, their jaws, their shoulders. If we also tend to want to forget about that stuff, not like discard it, like, oh, I'm getting stressed, I'll muscle through it. That's your body giving you very important information, and we should pay attention to it. Whether you act upon it or not, that's not the point. The point is, what we don't want to be doing is reacting out of default settings. We want to be making choices, and we can only make our choices if we learn the signs and see from kind of a third person perspective inside our head as to what that is.
Really interesting. So my next question, and I think you've started to cover it, really was, we're obviously, most of us stuck at home. Our routines have been corrupted majorly. We may have children, we may have spouses, we maybe have all kinds of distractions. What are some tips you might suggest for folks to learn to start mindfulness, to be introduced to meditation, some resources maybe that would be helpful, kind of where to start if this is something that's completely new to you, as it certainly is to me?
Well, the first thing I want to say is a phrase, and I think it comes also from Tara Brach, is what we resist persists. Right off the bat, these are not normal times. Everyone is under some sort of stress, just out of the mere disruption, out of the not knowing, out of the uncertainty. What we resist persists. So don't think of it as something you need to fight. I need to fight these feelings. I need to keep them up, because the mind feeds on that kind of stimulation. Oh, it doesn't recognize that you're trying to keep it away. It recognizes is that you're feeding it. And so it's going to keep on keeping on. It's okay right now not to feel okay. That's fine. There's a difference. Some people, the anxiety levels in that might get to the point where they need therapy. The people who already are highly, have high anxiety levels in that. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about the general population of us dealing with this crazy new environment, right? But we don't want to fight things. We want to be comfort and caring. So we're having negative thoughts. We're thinking things. Instead of trying to beat them down or push them away, they're going to come back stronger. Examine them. Think, why are we having that thought? Where is that coming from? That's the first thing. Recognizing the thoughts in your head. When students who start meditating, again, like I said to begin with, I didn't think it was something for me because my mind was too active. That, though, when I have a student say that to me, I say, congratulations, you're meditating for the first time, because you're sitting quietly and you're recognizing that these thoughts are occurring in your head, and there are a lot of them, and they keep flowing, and then they develop into more thoughts. That's the starting point, is being able just to sit quietly and examine our thoughts. Was it Blaise Pascal said something, the problems of all mankind stem from man's inability to sit quiet alone in a room? This is true, that we need this quiet time. So there are multiple meditation practices you can do. There's chanting, what we do is breath, because counting your breaths, focusing on your breath, is something that we can do everywhere. It doesn't cost us anything. We don't need special equipment, clothing, a place. We can breathe. We're always breathing. And it's ironic that COVID-19 attacks the breathing apparatus of a person. So that plays into it. So the fact that we could just breathe, just sitting and breathing in, breathing out, and focusing on that. And then when those thoughts come up, just let them go and focus back on the breathing. I ask students to count their breath. So in on 1, out on 2. It doesn't matter if you're breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth or however, that is irrelevant at this point. It's just the fact that that breath is happening, we can monitor it and count it. And then when the thoughts come up, we let them go by. We say, hi, thought, okay, goodbye. I'm breathing now. And then we go back to 1, 2, 3. Or if you want to just do it as 1, cycle, 2 cycle. Again, it's about having something that is non-reactive, and we're focusing on something that is calming our minds down.
Really cool. Thanks. Before we move on to some other maybe related topics, there's a couple good questions in the chat.
Great.
Michael says, this topic usually falls under departments of psychology. Interesting to have communication and apply to storylines. Can you say more about how you incorporate storylines into this topic? And also, what are the barriers to kind of letting go of some of these storylines?
Well, it's funny. One of the things it's in the syllabus, right? I say I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a guru. So if what we're doing activates severe negative thoughts, there are people, and we give the information for the great Judy Smith and her therapists to reach out to them. But it's the idea that those thoughts, they're storylines, but they manifest in terms of how we interact with others, how we communicate with others. If we just lived by ourselves in a cave someplace, it wouldn't matter, right? It's very easy. It's very easy to be blissful. It's very easy to be calm, but it is when we have to go out and interact with other people where all of those storylines focus. I use often anger because this seems to really resonate with students. I say, you're in a car, somebody cuts you off. You're driving down the highway and they cut you off. And what's your first reaction? Most times people say, I get angry. I get fired up. And then, so your mind has been activated. You're creating the storyline of you are the center of your movie, and that person has now risked, endangered your life or the lives of the people in your car. And what you're going to do is go teach them a lesson or find out what's going on. And so you chase that person down the highway, you speed up. They're driving fast, you're driving fast. They take the exit, you take the exit, they pull into a hospital. You pull behind them and you roll down the window, you're about to, you cut me off. And then they say, oh my gosh, I'm really sorry. I didn't even see you. My significant other or my son is dying. And I raced to the hospital to get here for their final moments. Suddenly that storyline that became, it shaped how you reacted. Now all of a sudden you find it wasn't true. And how the mind did all of that because, well, you were okay with it. You didn't examine it as, maybe this person didn't see me. Maybe this person is on their way to a hospital. Maybe they have to get someplace really fast. I'm okay. They didn't hit me. They didn't drive me off the road. I'm fine. I can keep on my way. But because we get triggered like that, the story then turns into interaction. And so that's where, and the basis for the book that we use comes out of what's called nonviolent communication. And that again is being able to interact with others in a way that creates a sense of understanding. it creates a sense of empathy for others, because that's the helpful way. That's the way to get through life, not always angry and attacking, and it's not healthy to do that. So that's why it falls in the, I think, in the communication department, because of that creation of story. But the other stuff's important as well. I hope that answered my question.
I think that was a terrific answer. I can't speak for him, but I think that was very good. The other related question is, do you have any recommendations for best mindfulness podcast or audiobook?
I do. Dan Harris is the place to go if you're just starting out, because he is a journalist. He has 2 books out. One's called 10% Happier, which he jokes that his brother said really should just be called 90% Less of a Jerk. And then his new book with Jeff Warren, who is a meditation master, is called Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. And he goes through, the first book is more of a personal memoir. The second book is actionable tips. Both have helpful information. The books are great. The audio books are, because Dan reads them, are hilarious. So you get to laugh. He always says what his contribution is to the mindfulness game is that he brought in the F-bomb. So it's, again, if you are sensitive to that, you may want to avoid Dan Harris, but I really suggest he's one. Mark Epstein also, he has a book out. In fact, he was in Dan Harris's video podcast yesterday. He'll be on the podcast coming up, which is called 10% Happier. He is also, because he is a psychotherapist, that's where he applies a lot of these principles to that. So that's very helpful as well. But I say the 10% Happier podcast, Tara Brach has a podcast. What else? Who else do I listen to? Usually, a couple is good enough. Lama Surya Das, but that's more of real Buddhism. So if you're not into the Buddhism part, that may get too deep in the woods for somebody. But I recommend anything Dan Harris does.
Awesome. Thanks. And a reminder for those out there, if you have questions, please feel free to submit them via the chat function. We'll be happy to try and get to those either while we're talking or afterwards if we run out of time. So let's shift just a little bit, kind of relatedly. The world of communications, that the department in which you teach, has really changed a lot the last few weeks in many ways. I think there's been a much greater emphasis on social media, on podcasts, on video talks, on the artists performing from their living rooms with a basic camera, all those different types of things. Any observations about kind of how that has changed? Anything that surprised you, and maybe any ways in which you think this might be the new norm in some regards?
Well, first of all, I don't really know about the new norm. People tend to be very predictable and set in their ways. And when abruptly pulled from that, I think, and this isn't a judgment, it's just an observation, that they bounce back. September 11th, we all remember the tragedy of that day and how we were going to be different after that. We were going to change. We weren't going to be as materialistic. We were going to care about what goes on in other countries, because we had no idea why this group wanted to attack us or where they even came from. 6 months later, 7 months later, we were pretty much back to our old ways. So I don't hold a lot of faith. I think there are things that should change, and I hope do change. For instance, support for small businesses, looking at where the things that we buy and what we buy come from. But I think we're going to go back to the way we were. One of the things that I have seen that heartened me as a journalist is the fact that people are turning back to the news. Now, this is where this kind of falls into both camps, is too much information at this point is not healthy. We can stew in this information of we don't know, of uncertainty, and that will fuel our anxieties. So the idea is you don't want a lot of news. You want to stay informed. And I think people are doing that. I've seen the ratings with the local newscasts and national newscast, that 6:30 half-hour block. People are turning back to watching that. Why? It's a quick capsule of news, and they're pretty much free of opinion, free of speculation. They interview the experts, the reporters tell the stories in a clear and concise manner, and we know what's going on, and we can go back to our day. I like, in the morning, listening to the NPR 5-minute update. That gives me what happened overnight. So I know I don't want to listen to speculations or projections of what might or might not happen, because we don't know what's going to happen. And that is terrifying for the most part, but the stress can be added to by then listening to other people rant and rave and do all things about that. So I don't know how much I love the fact that the comedians and the musicians, they're out there, but they do need to get paid. That's the thing, is that they're losing money on gigs, and it's wonderful that they're doing a lot of this for free. But at the end of it, hopefully we all go back and we enjoy live music and live theater and go back to the movies and just engage with human beings again, as opposed to, I don't know about you, but I'm sick of talking into a computer, right? And my computer is, I think, is sick of listening to me. So I'm going to be doing my 100th my 100th screencast this week. So in the last 2 months, I've recorded 100 videos for classes, and that doesn't even include the live classes that we have done. So yeah, there's a lot there, but social media has been a great help. It's also been terrible in that we've seen a lot of misinformation and a lot of speculation being bandied about. And so again, I don't think that's changed a whole lot prior to this. It's just now the topic is COVID-19.
Sure. I've talked with a couple other faculty members previously about the COVID-19 situation perhaps becoming a case study. That might be too strong of a term, but a lessons learned opportunity for our students. Do you think that's something that can be applied in your communications courses about how we reacted to this, how stories have been told? I know you're certainly a storyteller by trade in the sense. I would imagine this provides some type of future learning opportunity for our students.
Well, certainly, like September 11th, in the journalism area, breaking news, how to cover a story where you literally can't get out of your house to cover it, employing other tools to engage with experts and people. That also, all of those things are going to be great fodder for further study and classes, and that we can demonstrate that we can tell stories in different manners. It doesn't just have to be the same old way, that we have different tools, different techniques, and still achieve a good story for our audience.
Wonderful. So we know many of our faculty members are obviously teaching virtually, but many are also participating in student recruitment virtually. This is we're wrapping up peak student recruitment time, we and pretty much every other college around the country. Have you been involved with that? How has that experience gone so far? And any advice for the students and parents who might be watching as to how the process might go?
Well, fortunately for me, my coworker Courtney Lang has been handling the video recruitments or the online recruiting sessions. And from what I've heard, she says that they are incredible. They're very well done. They go very smoothly, and the students and parents seem to like them. I'll be participating next week in a dine with the department for communication. And I just think it's a great outreach, and it's convenient. And that's what really it ends up being. The only thing that I really am saddened about is that the families cannot experience the beauty of the Mercyhurst campus, especially now in spring when the flowers are starting to bloom. And that was always something I always said, that Mercyhurst looks like a movie set for a college in how meticulously groomed it is, and sending that message that we can take care of our plants and our flowers, and we can take care of your valuable children there. So that's the thing the only thing that I think is sadly missing, that you can't replicate, but the access to anyone in this way is just a wonderful way. And I think parents, they should take comfort in that. A couple things. One thing I want to add that you didn't ask about, and I don't want to sound like a total kiss up, but I think this is an important message for parents and for alumni and everything else, is just how wonderful and how expedient the administration was to turn us around. That they didn't hem and haw around. They said, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to engage, and the message was clear. It didn't come from all over the place. It was very focused, and we did it. They were, again, to varying degrees of perfection, right? Nothing's going to be perfect in this, but the fact that we could do it, and the fact that the resources were so quickly committed to us to doing it, it was just great. I mean, it really impressed me as to, wow, they took the bull by the horns and did this in such a short amount of time. And then they reiterated. It was always with the students' best well-being, the students' well-being first. For instance, when we were teaching and all of a sudden we had to evacuate everyone from the campus for their own safety, it was, all right, do this, do, and don't do that. It was never, well, you can still do, it was a clear message. And I think those of us who followed that message, we come out the other end with students that got to learn still and are better off for it.
That's great. Can you share briefly maybe just a little bit about, I think communications is one of those majors where it can springboard you into a lot of different careers in a lot of different areas. Maybe share a couple of stories of some of our recent grads and the interesting things that they've done with that major.
Do you want me to be completely honest? Because yes, you can obviously, you can take this degree, and the thing that what makes it so strong and how we've rebuilt the degree in the last couple of years to be integrated media and strategic communication, and allow it to be customizable for the student. So the student comes in, they aren't a number. They've never been a number at Mercyhurst. They've always been who they are, but you work with the faculty to figure what path you want to achieve, what your goals and dreams are. And I always joke, if you don't know what you want to do, that's fine too. We will help you in that regard. So coming out at the end, you have applicable skills. We have students who have become lawyers. We've had students become teachers. We also have our typical students who have become news producers. One, in fact, is with CBS This Morning. We have somebody who's an event planner at the New York Times. We have somebody who does marketing and public relations at Disney. She used to be with 20th Century Fox until Disney bought them and they retained her. So we have a music producer who works with Stevie Wonder and other people like that. We also have marijuana farmers who are incredibly wealthy and using the communication techniques on dealing with others possibly, but they're doing it legally. So that's an industry now in certain states. And so we have students that have decided to do that. And we have people, we have marketing, we have social media influencers. It's really what you want to do with it. And the great thing is that we focus on practical experience. We focus on internships, and it's not theoretical. You get theory, but it's embedded in practice. And so those, when they go out for a job interview, they can say, look, this is how I know what to do. And because we teach a variety of things, many of our students get hired because they not only do the one thing that company is looking for, but they also know how to do 2 and 3. Yes, I know strategic communication, but I also know how to shoot and edit video. And they're like, really? That's helpful. And they get the job. Sometimes even with the waiving of that 1-year experience, because of how we encourage the internships and our classes have practical interactions with real life clients that they can show to potential employers.
That's really great. Well, that's just very, very fascinating stuff. So I typically close with kind of my personal favorite question that I think everybody has an interesting answer to. What is your favorite part about Mercyhurst?
Well, I could say the people, right? Because and that sounds cliches, but that is true. I also like the fact that the ease it is to interact with others, to go to somebody. There's not layers and layers of bureaucracy that you have to cut through and egos you have to cut through. The provost has her door open. Yes, she's super busy and now is not the time to go see her, but she's available if you need to see her. Our dean, Duncan McGill, open door policy. I text him if I need something. So that kind of access to people in power. President Victor, you see him walking the halls. You see him out at games. You see him out on the quad. That kind of access to me is what makes Mercyhurst, as we say, Mercyhurst is home. That's part of home, is that we're all there. We're all different. We're all busy, but yet we also have time to help out somebody, to answer a question, to do a solid for somebody. that part of me, that part of it is my favorite part of Mercyhurst.
That's awesome and really well said. Brian, we really appreciate you taking the time today. For those on the line, if you have additional questions, you need some resources, you can always reach out to us at alumni@mercyhurst.edu, and we'll be glad to help connect you with Brian. Next week, we will have a conversation with Heather Ballas from our Career Development Center about gaining employment, keeping employment, the resources that are available for our students as well as our alumni. So we hope you'll come back and join us then. Brian, thanks again for your time. Wish everybody out there to be safe, be well, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Carpe diem, everybody.
Carpe diem.